Hello, everyone. Welcome. As you get logged in, you'll see a survey on your screen. If you could take a second to fill that out, that would be great. You can also drop into the chat where you're calling in from today. We'll get started in just a minute to allow for more people to get signed in. And while we wait, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Madison Burnett, and I'm a BCBA. I lead our professional development program, and I will be available to support you throughout the webinar. In addition to that role, I work alongside other BCBAs on our clinician-led recruitment team, and I support in the effort of recruiting high-quality professionals to join our team. If you are interested in joining MPG, please indicate so in the post-webinar survey at the end of this webinar, or you can email careers@manhattanpsychologygroup.com. Okay, I see that we have quite a few new attendees joining us, as well as about 70-ish% that are returning. So welcome back to those who have attended previously, and we're thrilled to have everybody here. All right, I am going to end the poll, but don't worry, it's just an optional poll. Okay. So before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Manhattan Psychology Group. We were established in 2011 and have continued to grow our team consisting of skilled adult and child psychologists, neuropsychologists, behavior analysts, special educators, licensed social workers, behavior interventionist. As a team, we're committed to wraparound care, which includes our wide range of services from mental health and testing to ABA and educational services. This holistic approach allows us to address various needs and challenges with compassion and care. We provide services to clients out of our Upper West Side and Long Island City offices in home, school, and clinic-based settings, as well as through telehealth. Our team is committed to serving individuals, couples, and families of all ages and in diverse settings. We're also pleased to offer these free monthly webinars for parents and professionals where we continue to learn and foster meaningful connections. Our vision at MPG is to create a future where individuals and their families feel supported, connected, and empowered. Our mission is to provide multidisciplinary integrated support for individuals and their families who experience mental health and behavioral and educational challenges. Next is some housekeeping information about CEUs. For those seeking CEUs for this presentation, you'll need to collect the code words stated and complete the post-webinar quiz and survey. We'll post the codes on the screen and verbally say them, and once we move on, we will not be able to come back. We will send out a post-webinar quiz in the last 10 minutes of the presentation for you to get your CEU. Any polls during this webinar are not required, but they are encouraged. We'll be leaving the chat open today, but please post any questions you have in the Q&A so that we can make sure that they are seen. All right, and now I'd love to introduce our presenter, Braxton. Braxton is a speech and language pathologist, board-certified behavior analyst, and coach. In addition to his credentials, he has pursued additional education in psychology, academic instruction, sensory motor integration, and effective implementation methodologies, and is currently pursuing his doctorate of business administration in industrial and organizational psychology. He has provided services from Virginia Island to Washington, D.C., California to Mexico. He specializes in severe and multiple disabilities and assistive technology and cognitive linguistic functions across the lifespan. He has been an invited speaker to both sides of the globe, and he has served as the educational director of a K-21 School of Education, Adulthood Daily Living Program, and Employment Program, as well as the CEO of an ABA company providing services to individuals with autism. As the owner of Innovative Therapy Solutions, he has honed his eclectic background into his education, consulting, and coaching to provide comprehensive approaches for maximal consistent growth for individuals, parents, and professionals in organizations. And now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Braxton.
Hello, and good morning, everyone. I will say one of the places I didn't see on that list of things was Hawaii. No one said, I think I might be the only person who's calling in from Hawaii because it is 5 a.m. here. So if there is anybody from Hawaii, please put it in the chat because I think you should get extra kudos points for showing up at 5 a.m. All right, I am excited to be here today. And for those of you who have not ever had a presentation with me before, it can be a whirlwind at times. And so that's a promise, and I'm sorry in advance, especially if you are anywhere close to my time zone. I can be a lot to have at the beginning of your day. Let me get my slideshow pulled up for you. And let's see. Are you Is it sharing for you?
We see your whole screen.
Okay, no, wrong screen. That's not the one we need then.
We could see the PowerPoint. We could also just see how you had the little slides on the side.
Gotcha. Let's do.
Tammy, your question, yes, I will be posting a link to the slides in the chat as well as on our ABA calendar momentarily.
Gotcha. Well,
Braxton, if you'd like, I can share my screen.
if you would please, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
absolutely.
Because I think it's because I have too many screens going on apparently.
It's okay. All right, so we will start here.
Thank you so much. All right, so how many, by the way, this is going to be interactive, so I apologize if you were just going to listen. You can just listen, but I will have questions along the way. So how many of you have been on a trip or go on trips? And there's inevitably somebody who is the planner, the one who knows, especially if you're doing a road trip. We're going to specifically talk about road trips today. That you're somebody who has a planner who is like, they know exactly where you're going to be, what time they're going to be there. We're going to take this exit. We're going to stop at this place. We're going to go to the bathroom here. Maybe you are that person, so feel free to cop up to that also if that happens to be you. Yep, absolutely me. I'm the planner. I'm not shocked though, all the BCBAs are the planner. If you have a TA for your road trip, how many of you have that? Actually, you don't have to contest that. That's fine. But that's a piece of it, right? We have these people who are very much the planner and are the ones who are knowing exactly where we're going to go, what road we're going to take. If we're going to take a side route, they're the ones who planned the side route. It's not like we just, oh, hey, that looks like a fun road. We probably planned it out, right? That absolutely happens all the time. And it is something that whenever we're looking at these groups of professionals, and particularly these three that we're talking about, we see that a lot. They tend to kind of be the same person. Your SLPs in particular, like I don't know if I have any other SLPs in here. If you are an SLP, go ahead and put that in the chat. I'd love to know if I've got somebody else in here talking, or if you're an OT, please put that in there also. But in general, those, I have Carly. Hi, Carly. And so those are the definitely people that tend to be like that anyway. Now tell me, if you've been on these road trips and you've had two of those people at the same time, does that go very well? Like, how does that go for you? If you have two people with their task analysis, right? If you have two people who are trying to lead the tour and do it, and like, we're getting off at this point. Well, no, we're getting off at that point. Well, this has a better rest stop. Well, this one over here has like a nicer view, and that's what's important to me, right? So this, as we're going through this conversation, I want to go ahead and put that in your mind as that's how I liken this situation that we're going through right now, is that you have, I sometimes give the analogy of, if you have the two or three teachers' pets in a room, right? The kids who are maybe like high performing, want to get the best grades, who want to do all of those pieces, you know who I'm talking about. They are rarely ever friends, right? Like that personality type, the ones you can see, they don't hang out together. You would think they would. It would make sense, right? They would want to be on projects together, whatever. I mean, sometimes a little bit they co-align, but for the most part, they don't. Um, and that's kind of the situation we see occurring here, is that you have the person, you have the planner, you want the person who does all of that. Well, getting the two of those together is a difficult situation. And so often when you have an OT, an SLP, or a BCBA, that's kind of what's happening. So what we will talk about today is some of the information about these different people and their characteristics. So that way we can figure out how to do that. How would you go on a road trip with somebody else who is also kind of like that? And how do we navigate that? In particular, again, so I do these analogies about road trips and stuff. And then I'm like, now I live on an island and it doesn't necessarily translate because like, yeah, we don't do road trips. It takes us 2 hours to get around the whole thing. But especially from the Midwest where I can drive hours and hours and hours without seeing anybody. Have you ever done like a caravan trip where it's multiple cars, right? Multiple people. And even if there's only one or two, that's a reaction, right? That's the worst, especially if you're the planner. You really don't like it. But that's what we're operating with here. When we have a child with special needs or an adult with special needs, we are trying to organize a caravan, even if that's not our job. Technically, our job is our car, right? Technically, but you can't just drive off in your car. You know, what's that adage? You know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Well, if that doesn't apply to this, I don't know what does. And so, well, yes, you could, and there's always somebody who does it, right? And as we get through this, you might be like, "Ooh, did I do that a couple times? Did I drive off?" You're like, "I'll just see you at the next rest stop." Or people in our field who do that, like, you know what? I'm just going to take care of me. I'm not going to take the whole caravan together. That don't work so well. Or if it does, you might have somebody who's upset about it. So again, I'm going to try to draw some of these parallels to a real life experience that and how we can kind of relate to this. And so as we're going through that same thing as you would with a caravan of people, especially if you got more than one person who's wanting to lead it, you have to decide where to get off, what exit we're going to take. When do we take a detour and when we don't? How do we make those decisions? When we're going, you know, a lot of times if you're anything like me and my friends and my family, we kind of start to speed up, go a little faster than normally would because, oh, well, I get in front of that person, even people I don't know, and you'll go down the interstate. I'm like, well, we're going to stick together and we're going to go, I get in front of that person and they get in front of me and then we kind of go and then I lead for a while. We actually end up going a lot faster than we normally would. And that's kind of what I would expect to see when we know the rules of the road, when there are common rules of engagement, and we can kind of identify when do I signal that how do I signal that I'm going to get in a different lane and drive that way for a while beside you, or when is it? How do I know when the next person should lead or letting somebody else do it? And how do we decide when to take a detour? Sometimes we take a detour even if it's not what I want to do. I don't need a rest break, but we're taking one anyway, right? So how do we coordinate those pieces? Again, I have less than an hour if we're going to leave some time for Q&A. So this is somewhat of a blitzkrieg. I'm going to give you a smattering of information and pieces to help you start to fill in that idea of, you know, like a driver's ed, like pre-driver's ed here, right? So that way you can have some of those ideas and pieces and to be able to implement them. I hope by having this idea of this analogy of driving down the road, taking a caravan, being that person, you would be able to translate this a little easier because you can at least relate to that and go, okay, how should I do it in this situation? And knowing that whenever you're doing these things, not everyone's on board with it. Not everyone's as good at it as you are. Not everyone is aware of it. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do my thing and go. I'm like, well, that's great, but that doesn't actually help the situation. You actually cause more problems whenever we're doing our own thing or whenever you're not able to communicate well about this. Again, if you've done a caravan drive, you've been there, you've done that. It's my brother, and he's the one. I know it. Like, I know he's the one. We all want to get to the same place, but the way we can get there is drastically different. And some people aren't as skilled at doing it together, right? And so, and that is a skill set. It is absolutely a skill set. I think it's erroneous of us. That was a big word. I think I got that from the movie Chicago. It's erroneous for us to think that it's a skill set that everybody's born with or that everybody should just have. So we're going to make sure that we are mindful of that. So let's go on to our next slide. I want to go ahead and give you some resources. Crucial Conversations, Radical Candor, and Collaborating with the Enemy. Those are 3 books that some of the pieces that I'm pulling up from here or have come from that. I've done a lot of adaptation and pulled from many other things, but if you just wanted a place to go look other than my boiled down, hopefully somewhat condensed version, those would be some great places to start. Crucial Conversations because of the ability to communicate with other people. So when you're trying to navigate these spaces and how we go and how to, especially about putting ourselves in the mindset of other people, Radical Candor to preparing us for that and how to have that in a kind way, and then Collaborating with the Enemy. Again, I don't like that we have that as an idea that the people see people as the enemy. However, if you get the skill set of collaborating with the enemy, you should be perfectly fine collaborating with someone who is actually headed in the same direction as you. Okay. So first off, we're going to talk about understanding our drivers. So I wanted to talk about some of the largest barriers is not understanding the drivers and their driving customs, right? We kind of highlighted that. And so I hope that's evident for you. Please type in the chat. Let me know. Do you see what I'm talking about, where the barriers are? Do you see how this is the main concern here? Is that it's not that, again, we're all going the same way. We're going down the same, it's like a 16-lane highway. That's the other complicated part, right? It's not just if it's a 1-lane highway, you can't pass, you can't go around. It's just, I'm from the country, I'm like real rural. So you get behind a tractor that's going slower than you, and that's just what you're doing, right? That would be almost easier, more frustrating because somebody else is holding you back, but that's not the situation. We have a lot of lanes to go through. And because of that, I can pass, I can get all the way on that 16th lane and think I'm heading on down. But again, if somebody else exits or needs to exit, I'm gonna say that just if they want to, but if they need to, whether because of themselves or the learner or what they're trying to do or what's going on in their car, the stuff that's going on in their vehicle that we don't know about, if they need to exit or need to do something different, I need to go slower, we don't know it, right? Great. I'm glad that this is hopefully resonating with some people. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about what I don't want you to be. And I'm going to tell you this, and I don't put it on the slide. I'm just going to say it. And then it just occurred to me that this is recorded, but you know what? I've said it enough times by now. It's out there plenty. And I say this with all the love in my heart from my fellow BCBAs. We're going to start by talking about BCBAs. This is about, the only slide for you, and we'll talk about some others, but I want to start with you, is don't be what I, again, lovingly refer to as an ABA hole. Like, I can't, that's the best way I can think to say it. And to be perfectly honest, I'm glad people think it's funny because it's true, right? You're like, oh, that fits to some people, or it fits me sometimes, right? There's been moments that I said something, I'm like, even the way I was trying my best, but I was like, I use so much terminology with this parent or with somebody else that I'm like, they didn't get much of that, or that probably felt condescending. It felt condescending after I look back on it, right? So it's not, and I want to say it's kind of like trained into us to a certain extent. So this is what we're going to fight, right? So I want to talk about a few pieces that I think will help do that. It helped me. First, I want to talk about evidence-based practice. As long as we are very clear, evidence-based practice is a three-pronged approach, right? It is not just research. It is not just researched articles that have come out and been published. There's actually a four-pronged approach to evidence-based practice. It's not as widely accepted or widely used, but there is one out there that exists, and it talks about the environment, the situation that we are working in, and all the other context around that. So just pin, if you are going there, well, there isn't research on that, well, then you aren't actually doing evidence-based practice. And so be clear about that, that is a component of evidence-based practice, but it is not evidence-based practice. And I see that a lot, that they say, I don't have a research about that. I haven't found an article about that. There's nothing evidence-based about that. That's not true, right? There are two other components, and that's a whole other spiel, right? The ABA ethical code. More stringent doesn't always equal better. I think a lot of us can come up with some different examples of, especially things culturally, right? Like not accepting a gift. It is offensive, specific for specific cultures, and also just in general. It also does not build rapport between clients or with staff. Now, do we have to be careful? Absolutely, 100%. Do I feel that the BACB has overshot in their efforts? Potentially also, but that's also because I have a secondary ethics code that I am supposed to follow also. And so while each field has their own, and I'm not telling you do not follow the ethics code, to be clear, follow it. Please follow the ethics code that is for your profession, but just know that yours doesn't equal better than somebody else's. And so if it doesn't quite align, the best analogy I can come up with for this is people's religious beliefs, in saying your ethics code is in alignment with you and your beliefs and the group of people that you align with. 100%, that's fantastic. Great. There's other people who have other ethics codes, other beliefs, and other groups that they align with that at least at this point in time, are judged to be equal by standards, right? So they have state licenses, they are approved by our national organizations. So just because you have yours doesn't mean someone else should have theirs, and it doesn't mean they should have to operate by it. And being aware of that overall. I do think, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, so much of this is from operating out of fear. And we'll talk about how that affects us also. I want to say that the person with the most awareness has the most responsibility, and that's the way it is in any relationship. That's not just in the related services between two professionals, but it definitely shows up there. Just as, I don't know if you've ever done psychotherapy or marriage and family counseling or your own personal therapy, but I know with me and my spouse, one of the things we learned is that whenever you're the person with a higher skill set in that area, you have to take extra responsibility. If your goal is to take care of the relationship, if your goal is to get to this end result is more important than being right, then sometimes you end up taking up that additional space. You're taking up those additional responsibilities and using your additional skill set. And I'll tell you now, with you all getting this training, that bumps you up. Sorry, you're going to have more information probably, possibly, than other people. If you read any of those 3 books that I mentioned earlier, you're going to have more knowledge and more responsibility. So with great knowledge, right, becomes great power and great responsibility. And that's the way it is. And I will tell you, one of the crucial conversations in particular really helps with that, really helps with figuring out what we're bringing to this situation to go, oh, is this myself getting in the way? Am I actually focusing on what's the most important thing for the end goal? Or am I focusing on what's the most important for me, my MOs that are existing right now? And a lot of times coming into conversations, whether it be with staff or with disgruntled parents or with happy parents and what their expectations are. A lot of times when we have this conversation, we have to ask ourselves when I'm coaching executives and other directors and or BCBAs, like, is it important that you're right, or that at the end of this conversation, we are moving forward in a positive way? BCBAs like to be right. So do OT. So does everybody, right? So does everybody likes to be right. But what is the most important thing here? Is my goal to move us forward, for us to get to that next thing, for us to come back tomorrow good and prepared? Like if I'm having a difficult conversation with the staff and I'm like, today, the most important thing is that whenever they come back to work tomorrow, they feel confident, or they're not focused on this conversation, everything else going on, but they come back ready to focus on the learner. I can follow up with them about the other details about, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that, and we'll do something a little different in the future. But right now, when they're coming to me with emotion, it's probably best to focus on that right now. They don't have to do it all at one time. And I do try to follow a rule of, if someone comes to a conversation with emotion, trying to throw logic at it probably isn't going to fix it. Like, how many times, if you are upset, and you can please respond with the chat if this resonates with you, if you come to the conversation upset and your partner goes, hey, we just need to calm down. You just, if you went out to again, I'm from the country, if like, here's a tornado, an F5 tornado, and you're like, you just need to calm down. Does that work? Does that work with our kids? Does it work with our spouses? No, right? Does it work with you? Right? No, it doesn't. And so just a rule along the way, and this goes again with the collaboration piece. If someone comes to you, another professional, whether that be somebody who's a subordinate or not, or anyone else for that matter, if they're coming to you with emotion, chances are that you need to respond with emotion, and that's the place we need to focus. That's the place we need to stay in at that moment. Is, let's talk about the emotion and what's going on here. We'll get to the logistics later. Even if they come asking for solutions, chances are they probably won't. How many times have you had a friend who's coming and complaining to you? And if you, again, therapy says, I need to ask you, so are you looking for a solution right now? Do you just want me to listen? What is it that you're wanting from me in this instance? And sometimes people know and sometimes they don't. And so again, the more you know, the more responsibility you have to hone that skill of being able to find what they're really needing, what the MO is, versus what the topography they're looking for is. Yeah. Supportive solutions, absolutely. Compassion, empathy, or grace, all the way. So defending ABA. Here's another one. I have another one, a presentation about defending ABA, and the main thing that I feel like is a barrier to the acceptance of ABA at this point in time is that we have a tendency to defend, right? We just defend. Well, actually, it's just it. We have a tendency to defend. Most situations, the response is defensiveness. Again, if you've ever been to therapy, you've probably learned that if your spouse comes to you or somebody in your life comes to you and shares a concern of some sort, to immediately go into, well, it's because of this, or you don't understand this, is 100% entirely the wrong thing to do. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. It is literally the wrong thing to do, to trying to defend, because your focus is around, when somebody comes to you, your focus is on how you're feeling and how you're going through this and what that means to you. And it has nothing to do with why the person brought it up, the conversation in the first place, the thing that they're having at first. So again, we jump back to that. Well, if we can hear why they're coming here and address that first, well, then we can talk about the logistics. Then we can talk about facts. But again, as we've already illustrated, how often, if you're coming with emotion, do you want to be spouted facts? Even if they're true, because they're facts, that's not what you want to hear right now. Like, right? Whenever your spouse certainly doesn't like it whenever, like, I'm a fact person. I can't help it. But when I'm like, well, yeah, but if we did this and this and this, that's not what I want to hear right now, right? So the same is true in a lot of these situations. And I'm going to say these are my opinions entirely. I can't point you to a research study, and I wish somebody would. That's what we see a lot. Most of the time when people are coming to this conversation, it's because of strong emotions. It's not, especially what we can say, like, it's a fact, but it's not the whole fact. It's not all the facts. It's not the whole big picture of the truth. So I want us to keep in mind that two things can be true. Always, almost always. ABA can have been used to do some not good things, and also is the best option and solution that's out there. In that same vein, I want to talk about the difference between defending the science versus defending the practices, and they get lumped in together a lot. And we're defending the whole thing. Yeah, but ABA is this. Well, we don't do that. Well, if we start to tease those apart and say, just like I wish I could remember their presentation, but there was a podcast, and it was these two female BCBAs who talked about gynecology. I think it was don't throw the baby out with the ABA bathwater, something like that. So they were talking about how gynecology did horrible things to women, horrible things. But we don't completely discount all of gynecology now. Like, nope, we couldn't possibly, they did all these horrible things. It's bad. No, it's because we say, this is, yes, this is back then. We don't do those things anymore. We've learned, but they don't defend saying, well, yeah, but we had to do it. If we hadn't done it, we wouldn't have had this. That, from what I understand, wasn't the path that was taken. It was, yeah, that was not good. And no one should have ever done that. And we shouldn't do it now. If you have anybody, you see anybody doing it now, report it. This is what, because of that, we've learned all these things, and we're going to be extra diligent now in the future. And so being able to separate out, am I defending the practices and the people who practiced ABA, or am I defending the science, the field of? Because those are two different things. If we can separate those in our mind and help other people separate that in theirs, that will make a huge difference. It has a huge difference. And so my recommendation, I don't say ABA didn't do these things, or I shouldn't say that ABA was problematic. I am problematic. I have done things and said things as a human. The field certainly has. But as we can acknowledge and move forward from that, then people are more likely to, again, just like in our conversations with everybody else, they want to hear, they're there to talk. They're mostly here from emotions. If we say, yeah, you're right. What happened to you? Tell me what happened to you. Yeah, that should not have happened. It did happen because of the science at the time and what we knew and what we didn't know, whatever. But and a lot of people have that story. And I'm sorry that it happened. We need to work to fix that, because that we can be in agreement on. We don't want those practices to be happening anymore. Neither do they. Their difference is that they're like, it's the whole field. Like, well, let me tell you how to spot that out. Where do you see that? Do you see anybody doing that now? Help us find that. There was a hotline that said, these are the criteria. This is what more or less, at least if you, maybe not what a good ABA looks like, because we can't, that's a really difficult thing to pin down, but we can surely identify bad ABA. Yeah, I think if we were more diligent about putting that out there, what is this? This is what bad looks like. Hotline that, please, so we can be, everybody can be looking that out. And it's like, if it meets these criteria, I think people be more open. They would be more understanding. So these are some things for ABA as a whole and BCBAs in particular to be thinking about and being aware of. And next time you see, don't be N, you'll know what it is. All right. All right. Oh, goodness. We skipped a slide. Sorry. You don't have, there we go. So this one is, I told you what not to be. This is what you should be. Holistic. Don't be an ABA. You're going to be an ABA holistic is what you're going to be. So your code word is holistic. All right. Next, we're going to look at.
I just wanted to let everybody know this is a multiple choice quiz, so you do not need to know the spelling of this. You'll just need to be able to recognize it.
Thank you. All right. So the who and how of OTs and STs. So I want to just give you a little bit of information around the how they operate, right? Some pieces that you maybe you already know this, maybe you don't. So I want some pieces are one, most STs and OTs aren't trained or very minimally trained in having an assistant person. We're not trained in how to have somebody else run the things that we do. In the recent years, OTs more and PTs more because they've had assistants for much longer. An SLP or an ST assistant is relatively new. In some places, they don't even have them still. So it wasn't a part of the training and upbringing. So that the ability to teach others to do the thing that we're doing is not there a lot, especially the people who have graduated later, like myself. Those that we do have are associate level assistants. So I want to be very clear that like it's the people that are working with us are people who have gone through a fairly extensive program, OTs in particular, and also STs, but OTs are like it's an associate level degree that you get to be a CODA, certified occupational therapy assistant, or a physical therapy assistant. So it's who we're accustomed to talking to and working with is different compared to someone who has a high school diploma and 40 hours of training, right? Again, not diminishing at all the skill set that many of our RBTs have, but the knowledge that's expected and the skill set you have to impart your knowledge to those people is different, right? They're for SLPs, a lot of them you have to have a bachelor's degree in communication sciences. And it depends on where you're at and what the state's regulations are, I believe, depending on if you're looking at ASHA versus the specific state. But most of them it's a bachelor's degree. It's that background or some other qualifications that are similar. So that's a lot of knowledge that you're expected to have. So again, it'd be like the difference between talking to a BCBA to a BCABA is going to be different than talking to a RBT, right? So just understanding that the experience that OTs and STs have of who they're accustomed to educating and working with to do their things is drastically different. And so it's a different skill set, and that isn't as developed or is developed differently. SLPs and OTs, we work direct, right? We are with the kids. Like it's very rare that you're going like that you have an assistant. Again, some places have it more. You know, Arizona has a lot of assistants, which is wonderful. But for the most part, at least the training in particular for an ST and OT is about going and doing the job yourself. So it is as though at BCBA is that they're working directly with a child all the time. So what we're constantly trained to do, again, isn't this the piece of creating programs, making a plan, and getting somebody else to do it. All of our training, not all of it, but the vast majority is around you going and providing the service. Again, that's a drastically different approach. Because of that, so even something like this of how with RBTs, the idea is that you train the RBT and then they run the program and you check in at these, that 5%, 10% intervals and update that as you go. That is not at all even in the realm of mindset for an OT or an ST. It is get in there, do it, and constantly be analyzing and shaping. I would love, ABA is all about shaping, but I haven't seen a really great way to teach people to shape, right? It's complicated, it's nuanced, it's, when do you go up with more prompting or less prompting? When do you increase reinforcement, a schedule to, an FR1 because this is harder than what this other thing is, and you have to do it really skilled to be able to shape. It is a skill, and it's something that you have to learn and train. That's what OT and ST is really trained to do, is how to be in the moment, analyzing things quickly, and reacting, and so you can shape really well. You can shape quickly. Now, is everybody good at that? Some more than others. Some people kind of get rote and they do the same thing, and then which is different. But that is, in general, the approach that's taken is in the moment, shaping, analyzing, going as if we were, when the BCBA is there working directly with their individual. So because of that, that just puts us in very different mindsets. It also makes it extremely difficult for them to put onto paper or to express to somebody else. What is it that you do during a speech therapy session? And from my experience, the thing that's hard to communicate is I'm doing really in-depth analysis and shaping during that time, especially with a lot of our different, our more complex learners across the board. So how easy is it for you to put that onto paper? The times that you're going in and going, all right, I'm analyzing the function of behavior and the function changed. So I switched and I went to something else. So when a speech therapist like I do child-led, you're watching the child and assessing where their MO is and going with the MO. That's what you're doing. How many of us struggle with that? How many of our RBTs struggle to really capture, not only follow the MO, but capture it? If you are really good at teaching people to do that, please message me after this. I would love to know what you're doing. That's so hard. It is, somebody, they just have it. I hear that a lot. The RPTs just have that skill set. That's what an OT or an ST is typically trained to do. That's the focus. It's not that we don't want to follow a plan of some sort. A lot of them do have lots of plans, but it's that we are trained to go with what they have and go with their MO is. It's the same thing we're trying to do in ABA. Instead of contriving it, right? We're trying to do artificial reinforcers, but they don't know that that's what it's called, but that is kind of the look. So another thing that we are trained to do is in our approach to selecting goals is around maximal benefit. So the maximal approach, saying that we do not want to teach a smaller skill if we could teach a larger behavioral cusp, if you will, right? Or some of those pivotal skills, teach those that will get us those other things for free. So we are literally taught to go top down, do not go bottom up, because we don't want to waste the child's time. Now, the downside to that is sometimes you're like, hey, you need to go down a few slices. You need to go a little farther down. And we get so stuck in trying to ethically, they're truly ethically, it's unethical for OTs and STs to go to a lower level when they could have done a higher level and got it for free. In theory, that's the goal. So when you see them being resistant to going down to more minutia, it's because for us, it's been trained into us that we shouldn't do that if at all possible. And it's hard to navigate. It's hard to choose when to do that. I think we all struggle. I think BCBAs or ABA, people in ABA err on the side of caution, the opposite direction. We slice back too far. We are doing a minute scale. I'm like, why? Why are we doing that? That's so much extra work. It's going to take so much longer. Yes, are we guaranteed to hit every piece? Yes, which is great also. But also, when do we probe ahead? When do we check forward and go, hey, you know what? I could actually get this. Or if I did this program, I think I could get you to bump up quicker than that. It's complicated and that's difficult to do. But that's also one of the reasons why we have this opposition as far as where we're coming from. Top down, which is literally what we're trained to do, versus bottom up, which again, I think is what ABA is more trained to do. This isn't particularly true because of the frequency of therapy for OT and ST. We're expected to get the maximum amount of benefit with the minimum contact. ABA has this research, it says that it needs to be 30 hours of ABA, which is beautiful and wonderful. And to be perfectly honest, ST and OTs are jealous. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, God, if I had 30 hours a week or 40 hours a week, what a difference that would make. We're jealous. But it's because of what we've identified as therapeutic benefit, we can see drastic amounts of change. Again, not always, not with every therapist, but we have been able to show that we can have drastic amount of change in speech and OT in 3 sessions a week, which I feel like, to a certain extent, we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot with that to a certain extent. But technically we do. The fact that we see the progress that we do see is very amazing. And part of that is because it's having a master's level person in there doing that analysis and shaping in the moment. Now, I think we should definitely have some research out there that shows when that doesn't work, when that's not enough, and what that other amount of therapy is needed. But at this point, we don't. We are trained to be naturalistic. Everything that we're trained to do is do not sit at that table if at all possible. There are some times that we do, certain things that we do, but if at all possible, do not do it at a table. We are trained to do push-in therapy. That is considered, least restrictive environment. So the act of going in and being with a child doing what they're doing in their classroom, that is what we're taught as supposed to be our gold standard. So anything the opposite direction of that is we do it if we have to. We do it sometimes because that's the only way we can do the caseload. For instance, in school districts, like we have to pull kids here to do it because I have 60 some kids on their caseload sometimes, and they have to get them all seen in a 40-hour week. And that's the only way to do it, is to pull kids in together versus going into their classrooms. But that is so important for us. Again, what we taught as our ethical standard is do our best to be in the natural environment, make it look as naturalistic as possible. So again, that's one of those aversions to anything that looks more structured almost at all, because ethically we're told you can do it if you have to, but you should feel guilty about it. And then finally, diagnosis and content versus methods. In OT and ST, the whole point of your master's, your bachelor's, is teaching you about the thing, about language and speech, or about motor movements, etc. Their whole master's is how to identify when it's wrong, when it's going wrong, and if at all possible, why? What's the etiology? Why is this thing going wrong? Why is it not working? So, which is drastically different, right? I don't think, unless there's something, maybe things have changed since I got my BCBA. That's your master's isn't about what's going wrong in their speech. It's not about what's going wrong in their motor movements. It's not about what's going wrong in their visual processing or their visual scanning. It's about recognizing that there is a deficit, and the master's in ABA is, what are we going to do to change that, right? So there's a drastic difference in the information that we're getting and what your job is. In ST and OT, we're diagnosticians. Our responsibility is to diagnose, not only just identify the deficit, but preferably an etiology. What's going wrong in the brain? What part of the brain isn't working? And then we have to know the content about what to do with that. And that brings me to my next thing, is what are you the master of? This is, I believe, a poll. So tell me, what are you the master of? You're an OT, ST, something else, ABA? Got a fair number of something else's. I love that for sure. Great. So what we're talking about, what are we the master of, right? So OTs, again, this is my own phrasing of it. An OT is a master of motor movements and sensory movements and how the brain processes that. How does the brain process the information it gets from the rest of the body? And what does it do with that information to then give instructions to the rest of the body? That is, now again, PT kind of focuses on the legs and a little bit on the arms, and OT focuses on the whole body. Just depends on what it is and what they're doing, and then how do you apply that to the natural world? Truly, OT is occupational therapy, right? It's how do you do those motor movements, not just to complete them, but how does that affect your operation in your daily life? But it's all your 5 main senses plus vestibular and proprioceptive. You actually have 7 main senses, big ones, and that's what they're processing for, is 5 main. vestibular and proprioceptive. How is your brain taking in information, and how is it then sending information out to then do different things? And where does that break down? Where is that breaking down as far as the ability to move the limbs, to process the information in the brain, to be able to delays, that sort of thing. For an ST, we are looking at how is your brain taking in information orally and visually. If you work with people who are blind and deaf, I have, a lot of my experiences with blind, deaf, quadriplegic. It's even tactily then, right? But how are they taking information to process information, right? It's how are they taking that in order to be able to understand the world around them, to understand information that's being communicated from somebody else, and then how are they then processing that information and then giving that out? How do I then send out information that's in my brain, whether that's my MO, my motivation, or something else? How do they share that information out? We also have kind of like OTs, we have the added component of, then I also have to understand the physical mechanisms, what's going wrong. So maybe you've got it in here, my clients who have aphasia or apraxia. So again, my job is to diagnose those things. It's to not only go, yeah, I can tell you can't talk, but we're going to practice teaching you. Well, I have to diagnose the etiology. What part of the brain isn't working? Because that completely changes how I'm going to approach your therapy and what you're doing. That's a huge difference. And that's what OTs and STs are doing all the time. Again, really good ones, I should say. I shouldn't say everybody, but good ones are doing during the session. What part of your brain isn't working? What part of this isn't? What part of the muscles isn't? Is it a misfiring in the brain? Is it a change? Is it the muscles that are atrophied or that they're not strengthened? So I need to strengthen those just so you have those to use. But that's different. Strengthening muscles is not the same as speech. Like the neurons that are firing aren't the same. The muscles are the same, but the neurons aren't the same. So practicing strengthening won't help speech, but it would help the muscles that I'm going to need for speech, like all those pieces. So it's a drastic difference in what it is that we are trying to acquire. What is it that we're thinking on and processing on, and how do we make those decisions? In ABA, again, as a vast majority and a vast whole, you're the masters of teaching. How do we teach? What do we teach? If it's not working, how do I do something different? How do I move this forward? How do I change, again, slice back? How do I change the reinforcement system so that way they're getting something more? Again, these are wholly my opinions, and I have not seen research on this yet. But I think you'll find them to be true. I'm not even going to ask you, but I think you'll find these to be true. That's what we are the masters of in ABA, is the act of teaching. So I differentiate this as content. OT and STs are the masters of content. What is it that we need to be teaching? So whenever I choose a speech sound, yeah, there's a list of speech sounds and they more or less occur in a certain order. But if I see that you're struggling with this sound over here, which won't seem like it's related at all. So like, well, yeah, you're struggling with that one, but that one's the next, that one's also comes in at the same time. So I should teach it. I'm like, but I know that if you can't do this, because of the way your neurons fire and the way the muscles have to move, you ain't gonna be able to get that. You can't. Like, I mean, it's a waste of my time to pick that one. I'm actually gonna pick something that's higher because it doesn't fire the same way. It's not using the same movements. So that's how I choose that up there, which again is difficult, right? People are like, well, how did you choose that? Why'd you choose that? It's because I did all these things. I did all this analysis and all this diagnosis, micro diagnosis of the situation and what's going on here. So that way I would be able to identify the correct piece, or knowing that because they have this issue with their visual scanning, their sensory cortex, visual cortex in the back, that visual central gyrus, and then the way that processes, I can tell because of the way that they track across midline. Don't even bother trying to get them to do this action because they can't do it until we've minimized this primitive reflex, which requires them crawling on the floor. That was a long spiel, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen that one. The STNR, those primitive reflexes from babies, and that they can't cross midline because it makes them do weird things and it feels uncomfortable in their body. So we have them do army crawls. And you're like, what does that have to do with this up here? Well, it's because it's a whole thing in their brain. It's a pathway that's not lined up. So all of that to say, ST and OT knows content. ABA knows teaching. And this is where if we can get that clear to each other, we are going to be far better at heading down the highway in the right way. So for these next ones, some of these hot topics that you see, sensory processing, we have language development and AAC. Those are a whole thing in themselves, and I would love to talk to you about those. And it would maybe Manhattan Group will have me back to cover some of these other ones. But there are some big pieces in here that there are complete fundamental shifts in theory, in theoretical approaches that once people understand those, they have so much more clarity going, oh, it's what's your priority again, right? So when you're driving down that highway, is the goal to get there as fast as possible? Because some people that's how they drive, or is the goal to enjoy all of these things along the way? Like, I want to see as many things as we can as we go. Two very different drivers, two very, very different travelers. And we're doing different things. Is it that that we need to exit every so often just so we take a break, just so we don't ever get exhausted or we ever have to go to the bathroom? Or is it that no, we go until we need the bathroom? Right? So the way in which we're driving down this multi-line highway makes a huge, huge difference. And for each one of these, I promise you, I've talked on it many times, that there are some of those theoretical shifts that will make a huge difference. And so if nothing else, have those conversations with people. Sometimes they can't even explain it, what theirs is, because it's so innate in them. It's been trained into us on both sides. So for having successful collaboration, I do want to mention that people operate out of fear a lot. I think both sides, again, when this defensiveness on either side or the attacking is coming because we're afraid. We're afraid of doing the wrong thing. We're afraid of getting in trouble by our boards, by our ethical standards. And while I think they are wonderful and they're necessary, I do want to be clear that they can do more harm than good if they are done in extreme fashions, which one could almost argue might be the case in certain instances. So most often, whenever I see a conflict, it comes down to, I'm afraid I'm going to do the wrong thing. I feel responsible here for this child. And so because of that, I feel like I have to, I can't budge on this, because everything I've been taught tells me that that's not the way to do it, or at least everything as far as I know. And so I can't budge, I can't move. And same thing, like, I need to defend this because I know this is right. And if you think this is wrong, that's unethical that I allow you to continue to think this. So I do think a lot of the conflicts come from fear. And so when we are looking for what's that underlying emotion, be looking for that. Like I mentioned before, the person with the most awareness has the most responsibility. At this point, that might be you after this. I hope that by the time you're done with this, you feel like you've gotten a lot of awareness and clarity. So having successful collaboration, I put these in here because this is in that book for collaborating with the enemy. I'm not going to go through each of them because I could talk for hours. I really struggle with these hour-long presentations, as you can tell already. I have way too much content, but I think it's important that you see that these are all key pieces of being successful at collaboration, and that book talks about it. So if nothing, I hope it kind of whets your appetite for that. For the thing to take away, we've talked a lot about just the first step is your mindset, right? And you'll get this from the Crucial Conversations book and some of my other presentations. The first thing that starts is, who are you? How are you walking into this conversation? And that, I will tell you, that is Crucial Conversations actually has research on it. They talk about, I think it's like 80%, 90% effect on how the conversation goes is about you and your mind and how well you are prepped to go into that conversation. So questions like, why are you here? Why do you do this job? Why do you work with these individuals? Know that for yourself, and also know that for them, because chances are the answers are similar, the same. You're all here for the same reason. You're doing this job. You're for the same reason. You're working with these individuals because you care about them. You're going for the same reason. You're all driving to the same place. We're just struggling at how we got there, right? All right. Your next code word is driver. Driver, because we are the drivers, right? Wouldn't it be nice to be the backseat driver for a while? And some people are the backseat driver. There's some people who's like, yeah, you should do this. I'm like, then get up here and drive. And like, no, I don't want to actually. Like, okay, then. And that's you got to deal with them, right? How do we interact with them? How do we have those conversations with them? Last thing is rules of the road. Who guides the content? I would encourage you to, if you can establish that relationship, if you get in the habit of going, SLPs, OTs, teachers guide the content, then you can guide the methods and get to, that's a great symbiosis. If we can get people on the same page, like I'm here to help you guide the methods, and like whenever that what you're doing isn't working, you should be able as a BCBA to be analyze anything that they're doing. If people are like, oh, that's not, sorry, didn't mean to, I shouldn't make that face. Anytime if I'm like an OT is doing a thing and like that's not evidence-based practice, I'm like, is it working? Are they getting a result? If they are, then one, there's some evidence probably behind it because we the in-person, like the data that's taken, the professionalism of the individual, that's part of evidence-based practice. Two, if it's working, why is that working? You should be able to, and this is how I do it when I walk in. I'm like, I see what you're doing. This is great because of blah, 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 blah. These things are the things that are working, you know, because I'm a supercharged SLP, because of the fact I'm a BCBA, I can now tell you the piece that isn't working. If we shifted this a little bit, if you used this reinforcement structure instead, or we went over here and targeted this little sub skill, I'll bet you could do 3 times as much. And this happens a lot with social skills. People are like, oh, I'm doing these social skills, but then they're rote. Well, I can like, here, yeah, you're doing all these things. It's great. Here's the thing that I see that's missing out a tiny bit. So being able to be that collaboration for them. You have the content. The VB map is not content. The ABLES is not, it is content. Let me take that back. It is content, but it is not the analysis of deciding what content should come next. That is what an OT and a SLP do, is they analyze, they are diagnosticians to determine what content could be next. Do they always do it perfectly? No. Some people aren't very good at it. Probably also true. Just like there's some people who BCBAs who aren't very good at being BCBAs. But that is what they do. That is one of the drastic differences, is they determine that content and they decide in that list of possibilities, what's the right thing to do next, not just the next thing that we're going to do. So I hope this has provided you all. Please throw it in the chat. Has this been helpful? Does this give you insights? Does this give you some clarity? And I know we only have like 3 minutes, but we'll open it up for some questions.
Yeah, so there have been a few questions in the chat if you're able to open that. If not, I'm happy to read them.
Would you
Or
read
I'm
them,
sorry,
please?
in the Q&A.
Okay. Let's see. Let's say I have a family who is working with perform care, even though they're receiving ABA for the last 3 years. Anytime they have gotten involved with the client or the client, they have created problems which I have had to fix it. It took a long time to get the school collaborate with us again. The client finally was able to receive what he needed. There's now a new case manager who has not spoken with the team and is again starting to cause issues. What are your tips for trying to work with those who do not want to collaborate and turn burn relationships, etc. at the school? I would say all of this presentation to start with, right, is going all of these pieces we've talked about. Again, those effective conversations pieces it is, going into that, and your mindset and how we can get some of those things shaped is going to make a significant difference for you, so that we can go have that. And once you've built that, because it sounds like you've been successful at doing it, you did it once. It's just the switch over that made a difference, right? So you clearly have a skill set that's there. Using that, expanding on that, once you get that achieved, planning ahead for continued collaboration, because unfortunately, in the world we live in, every change, one person changes on a team and it can upset the entire boat. So planning ahead with those people of what are the standards that we have in place, making sure that there's a difference between expectations and agreements. Like if you get to a good place, take the time to actually go, all right, this is how I understand that we operate. I start with, I love that we operate so well together, right? This is how I understand it. How do you understand it? So we can make sure that that's kind of set out. And I think that'll help going forward after you've gotten to that point again. With the shaping, etc., with naturalistic setting be described in line with PRT. Yes, I think it would be very similar. Again, what they try to naturally do, right? And again, I love that they have such a structure to it, which is fantastic. I think it's a lot to learn, right? Some people do better at it than others, but absolutely, that is exactly what I'll kind of align it with. It's just that's what we've trained to do. And unfortunately, when you hear people say, "Oh, it's my gut instinct," it's just like, "Oh, I don't know, I just felt right," or whatever. It's because it's so ingrained, you don't even know that they do these things. Do you work as a BCBA, SLP, or both? I work as both. I refer to myself as a supercharged SLP. because it allows me to teach so much. But I do work as both. I consult as both. A lot of what I do now is honestly in business and administration and in organizations and how to operate that. And I've used my ABA and SLP and collaboration skill set to do that. I know we're at time. Do you want me to try to get through these last few, or?
I will send these to you. Everybody who had a question or have one after we do end our presentation, feel free to email me and I'll connect you on with Braxton so that he can answer your questions. And then the responses will be posted on some of our social media. As far as the questions that people have had about the quiz, so sorry, there was an error. If you refresh and you retake the quiz, you should be able to select both of the code words. Thank you, Braxton, so much. I hope everybody attended the webinar. I think it was very, very informative. And I do hope that you will definitely join us back. I know we have one in the making, so
Yes.
stay tuned,
Thank you all.
everybody. He's coming back.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Okay, everybody, I will be staying on for a few extra minutes. Braxton, you're welcome to stay on if you like. Otherwise, you can sign off.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so for the quiz, I will post the quiz again in the chat.